Welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. In today's video I'm going to be doing my June mid-month wrap-up. So this is the books that I have read for the first half of June, and so far this month I have read a total of 10 books and I'm really happy with the books that I've read. I feel like this video is going to be shorter than normal because a lot of the books I have read I have read them for upcoming videos, so I don't want to go too much into detail in this video because they will feature in upcoming videos where I go into a lot more detail, but I do still want to document my books I have read so far this month. So I'm just going to dive straight into the books. If you want to see my full stats, then come back at the end of the month where I will do my books that I've read in the second half of the month, as well as all my stats for the month. So, starting at the beginning of the month, I listened to The Mitford Affair by Marie Benedict. This is historical fiction and I gave this one 3 stars. So this follows the Mitford family, who are, or were, real people. So it is based on real life people and real life events that happened. Most famous from the Mitford family is Nancy Mitford, who went on to become an author. And I have read one of her books previously. I think it was called, I can't remember what it was called actually. I'll put it on screen. It was a Christmas one and it was okay. Definitely not a favourite read, but I have read one of her books. So in the Mitford family there are 6 Mitford sisters, and this follows, it doesn't follow all 6 of them, but does focus on I think the main 3 or 4, and it is set during World War II, and we have sisters that have different ideas and different kind of political persuasions. So there is a sister that is, or 2 sisters I think actually if I recall, that are loyal to the Nazi party in Germany, and one of the sisters kind of spies on the other and kind of gives information to the government about their involvement with the Nazi party. So there is a lot going on and there's a lot of different elements pulling into this story. I thought this one was okay. It wasn't my favourite. It did move quite slowly, I felt, and yeah, it just wasn't a favourite read, but it was okay, but nothing too outstanding. Then I read A Reign of Rose, which is by Kate Golden, which is book 3 in the Sacred Stones trilogy. So this is the final one, and this is a fae romance series, and I can't give too much away because obviously this is the 3rd book in a series. I enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. The kind of main premise of this series is very typical of a lot of fantasy romance series, in terms of we have a main character who gets pulled into this world that she doesn't realise that she's a part of, and it kind of goes from there. As I say, with it being the 3rd book, I can't give too much information about the plot, but I thought it was a good conclusion to the series, and overall I had a good time reading it. Then I read Wrath of the Damned by Ella Fields. This is book 2 and the final book in the Deadly Divine duet, and I gave this one 3 stars. So this is another fae fantasy romance, and I have to say I didn't love book 2 as much as I enjoyed book 1. I think book 1 I gave 4 stars if I'm not mistaken. I'm just going to double check that, but I think I gave book 1 4 stars, and this one just wasn't as good in my opinion. So as again with the previous book, I can't give too much about summary on this one because it's a sequel, it's a duet, so it obviously concludes the story. But book 1, we follow this character whose name I've completely blanked as usual, and she lives in the human world, and she is challenging. She has been left with this woman who is evidently not her mother, and she is very aware that that is not her child, so she is mistreated. And every so many years, I can't remember how many years it is, but every so many years the Fae come to the world to bargain and trade with the humans, and the woman decides that she is going to approach the Fae and bargain up the kind of life of the challenging in exchange for her real daughter. And things don't go to plan, and she ends up getting killed, and our human girl is left to defend herself, and she ends up getting involved with the Fae King, and events kind of spiral from there. As I say, I won't go into too much detail. I felt that this is kind of one of the strange circumstances where I feel like maybe this book could have benefited from being a trilogy rather than a duet. I felt that this second book felt very rushed, and there were a lot of things that the conclusion wasn't quite as satisfactory as I was hoping, and I feel like if the author had had the opportunity to write this as a trilogy, she could have developed a few plot lines, fleshed them out a bit more, because this one did feel a little bit underwhelming in terms of the conclusion. But I am glad that I've read it. I would read more from Ella Fields in the future. I think she's written some contemporary romance as well as fantasy romance, so I'd be interested to check out some of her other things. Then I reread The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. So this is one of the books that I have read for a video that I'm planning to do at some point. I think it's probably going to be later in the year, because I've got a few more books that I want to read for it. But this was a reread. I read this quite a while ago, and at the time I gave it 5 stars. On reread I have lowered that rating down to 4 stars. This one, I don't know when this one came out actually, let me just have a quick look. So it came out in 2011, and at the time this book was super hyped, and I think when I was reading it I kind of got swept along in the hype and kind of rated it higher than I maybe would today. Obviously I have lowered that down to a 4 star. I also feel that when I did read this I was probably a bit more generous with my ratings than I am now. I don't give out 5 stars as often as I did previously. But this one is a really interesting read. The writing in here is really good. It's about a mysterious circus, and I won't go into too much detail about the plot on this one because I think the best way to go into this one is not knowing that much, but it features this circus, and as I say, the writing in here is really good. It's really descriptive and you can really picture what this circus is like, and yeah, I still had a good time reading it, but I did lower this down to a 4 star. I actually listened to the audiobook this time around. Back when I read this, I wasn't really an audiobook listener, so I did really enjoy listening to the audiobook for this one. Then I read Sky Daddy by Kate Folk, and this again is for another video project that I'm working on, so I won't go into too much detail on this one, but this one I gave 3.5 stars to. This one is very different to a lot of books that I've read previously. This is about a woman who has kind of sexual desires towards a plane, and maybe that is all I will say for this video. It was an interesting read. I'm glad that I have read it. It's definitely not a favourite, but it was interesting, and as I say, I've never read anything like this before. Then I read Servant of Earth by Sarah Hawley, which is book 1 in the Shards of Magic series, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite a 5-star read for me, but I did really enjoy it. This one is the first book in a new fantasy romance series, and we follow a human character who lives in the human world, and I think it's every year or maybe every so many years, I can't quite remember, 4 human women are selected as kind of sacrifices to go off into the world of the Fae, and they have to cross this bog to get to the Fae world. And in the human world it is treated as like a great honour. If you are selected as one of these 4 girls, it's a great honour. The Fae are going to worship you, and you're going to be treated really well, and you're going to have riches, and you're going to marry like a Fae prince and all of this. They are kind of told a lot of mistruths, shall we say, about the Fae world. And in this one, our female main character, whose name I am really struggling to remember, Kenna I think it was. yes, Kenna. Her best friend is selected as one of the girls, and she decides that she is going to cross the bog with her friend in the hopes that she can bring her friend back from the Feywild, and kind of rescue her from her kind of destiny sort of thing. However, things don't go to plan, and Kenna ends up in the world of the Fae. And the Fae King, instead of executing Kenna, he decides that she is going to become the handmaiden for the Princess of Earthhouse. So in this Fae world, the Fae are split up into different houses. And when the Fae become of age, they enter in these trials, and to succeed in these if they succeed in these trials, they get their full powers and become immortal. If they fail, they don't get their magic, and they get kind of exiled. And the story kind of goes from there. All is not as it seems in the Feywild. People aren't necessarily happy. There is a lot of political unrest in the world, and some people really don't like the king and the way he's ruling. So there is kind of plans to unset the king from his throne. And Kenna is, because she's human, she's obviously kind of treated as less, and the Princess of the Earthhouse initially is very reluctant to have Kenna as a handmaiden, because she has been given to her because Earthhouse remains kind of neutral, and so doesn't really pick a side, and so the king has given Kenna to the Earthhouse as kind of to mock the Earthhouse. So the princess definitely resents that at first, but they soon become friends, and Kenna helps her throughout the trials. I won't obviously spoil too much of what happens, but this book does end on a cliffhanger, and I cannot wait for book 2 to come out. I believe it comes out later on in the year, and when it does, I will definitely be picking this one up. This one is also available on Kindle Unlimited if you do want to check it out. I picked up the book from my library, but it is available on Kindle Unlimited. Then I read Lady of Skye by Patricia Cabot. This is a historical romance, and this one, Patricia Cabot is the, I think it's her real name, and Meg Cabot's the pseudonym, but Patricia Cabot and Meg Cabot are the same person. Meg Cabot, for those who aren't familiar, wrote the Princess Diaries series and the Mediator series. They were some of my favourite series when I was growing up as a teen. And this is her historical romance. So under the Patricia Cabot name, she has a bunch of historical romances. I've never read anything from the Patricia Cabot name, and I'm not sure if I am eager to pick up anything else, to be honest. So this one I gave 2.5 stars to. I didn't really enjoy this one. This one as a historical romance for me doesn't really work. I have read this for an upcoming video, so you will see my full thoughts then. But basically we are following two characters. Dr. Riley Stanton comes to the Isle of Skye to be the new town doctor, and we have, what was her name? Brenna Donegal, and she is very much like an independent woman. She's been living on the Isle of Skye without her parents' knowledge by herself, and she has been kind of tending to the people in the town. And so when Riley Stanton arrives, he is very much viewed as an outsider, and it takes him a while to kind of settle into the town. And him and Brianna have a relationship, which I didn't really feel the romantic chemistry between these two, if I'm honest. It almost felt like a case of he's there, she's there, there isn't really any other options, they're going to get together. That's how it felt. I feel like if this hadn't been a romance and was just a story about a new doctor coming into town and kind of meeting the townsfolk and kind of settling into the town, that could have worked a lot better, because the first half of this book I was enjoying, and in my other video when I read this, I mentioned that up until the 50% mark there hadn't been any kind of hint of romance or anything like that. I think they kind of mentioned that the other was attractive, like to themselves, but like actually other than that there wasn't really anything. And then like in the next chapter, after the halfway mark, they were like kissing, and that came out of the blue, but not like in a good way. So yeah, didn't necessarily love this one, not sure I would recommend it, but I did read it. Then I listened to My Inconvenient Duke by Loretta Chase, and I didn't love this one that much. I gave it 3 stars. This is book 3 in the Difficult Duke series. So this one we follow, I think her name was Alice, if I remember rightly. Yes, Alice. And she has a brother, and at the beginning of the book he seems to go missing and no one knows where he is. So Alice and, I can't remember what his name was, the Duke of Blackwood, but I can't remember what his first name was. The Duke of Blackwood kind of go out to try and find Alice's brother, and they obviously journey and encounter a lot of different people on the way, as they try and find out what's happened to her brother. And because of the fact that they have gone off together, they are left in a situation where she is obviously, there's fears that she's been compromised because she's been alone with a man for, you know, pretty much, I think looking for her brother takes like a day, but it feels a lot longer, and not in a good way. And they end up having to get married because of her being compromised. And so that's kind of the first half of the book. And then the second half of the book is them being married and kind of supposed to be falling in love, but I didn't really feel that. The first half of the book I would say I liked more than the second half of the book. I didn't really feel that these two characters had a lot of chemistry, so the romance element of this one didn't really work for me, and overall it wasn't the best book that I've ever read. I'm not sure if Loretta Chase is a author for me, to be honest, because I have read another book by her, which was, I can't remember what it was called, but it's like her really popular one. Something Scoundrel's Night or something like that. I'm just trying to have a look now if I can find it on my phone here, but I can't remember. I'll put it on screen, but like one that is like really well loved in the community. Again, I didn't love that one either and gave that 3 stars, so I'm not sure if Loretta Chase's writing is for me, but I do have some of her other books on my TBR and ones that I own, so I'm sure I will be revisiting her at some point, but as I say, not sure if her writing's for me. And then I listened to The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. This is book 1 in the Low Blacklock series, and I gave this one 4 stars. So this one is a mystery thriller, so I don't want to give too much of a synopsis for this one because I personally like to go into mystery thrillers not knowing much, but I will give like a brief synopsis for this one. Because sometimes I feel like the synopsis for a mystery thriller can really spoil it if you go into too much detail. But basically we have Low Blacklock, who works for a travel company, and she's very much low down the scale at this company. She doesn't get to go on the big fancy trips. That is something her boss always does, but her boss is going to be unavailable for this most recent upcoming press trip, so Low ends up going, and it is a press trip on a new cruise ship called the Aurora, and it's basically going to be travelling around the Norwegian fjords. And on this cruise ship, Low, on the first night there, believes that she hears someone being pushed overboard, and it is basically her kind of trying to figure out what happened and who was pushed overboard. I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4 stars. I think the writing was really well done. I had a fun time reading it. It's a very engaging story. Ruth Ware is quite good at kind of hooking you in and making you want to keep reading, and that's what I felt like in this book. I was listening to the audiobook and I didn't really want to put it down. I wanted to keep reading to find out what happened. I will say, knowing that this is a sequel, or knowing that there is a sequel, so this was published, when was this published? Like quite a long time ago. I think this is one of her earlier books. 2016 this one came out, and I've only just got around to reading it. And there is going to be a sequel called The Woman in Suite 11, and that is marked as book 2 in the Low Blacklock series. So it's obviously going to feature Low Blacklock again as the main character. And I think knowing that kind of detracted away from some of the events that happen later in the book. There are some things that happen later on in the book. I won't obviously go into too much detail about what those are, but knowing that there is a sequel that features her really kind of dampens those things that are happening, because you know the outcome, you know she's going to survive. And I think that kind of did have an impact on my enjoyment, because like, you know that she's going to be fine, so the stakes then are lowered when you kind of get to the big action parts at the end of the book. But overall, I did really enjoy this one. I would recommend Ruth Ware as a author that I would recommend for mystery thrillers. I've read pretty much all of her books now. The only one that I've not read is The Turn of the Key. She is a solid 3-4 star author. That's what I've given all of her books, either a 3 or a 4. Haven't given any of them 5 stars yet, but it is quite difficult for a thriller to get 5 stars from me, or a book in general. It's quite difficult to get 5 stars, but particularly a mystery thriller, I don't give 5 stars out very often to those. So definitely would recommend this one if you haven't done already, and I would read this in preparation of book 2 coming out later on in the year. I don't know whether you will have had to read book 2. I don't know whether you will have had to read book 1 to get on with book 2. I don't know how much overlap of story there's going to be, but I feel like book 2 is probably going to reference some of the events that happen in this book, so I'd recommend diving into this one now before book 2 comes out. And then lastly for this video, I read Love in the Time of Scandal by Caroline Linden, and I really enjoyed this one and gave this one 4 stars. This is book 3 in her Scandalous series. I haven't read any of the other books in this series, and for the majority of historical romances, they work as kind of interconnected standalones, so you can usually read them out of order. And I feel like that is perfectly fine to do with this book. However, there are events that are mentioned in this book and referenced in this book that obviously happened in previous books. So perhaps not reading those did detract from the enjoyment, I'm not sure. But obviously you'll get more enjoyment or a better understanding, obviously, knowing those previous events when they're referenced, but I don't feel that did impact my enjoyment too much. So in this one we are following Penelope and Benedict, and at the beginning of the book Benedict is courting someone else, and him and Penelope get caught in a compromising situation. He rescues her from another man who is trying to assault her, basically, and he rescues her and they get found in kind of a compromising situation. So the scenario is that Penelope either has to marry Benedict or kind of go abroad to outrun the scandal, and they end up getting married. So at the first half of the book, they are not married, they're not together, they don't really like each other at the beginning of the book, and then the second half of the book is them obviously being married, learning to love one another, and I did really enjoy this one. There is a lot of things that happen in this book, particularly towards the end. There is a lot of drama, a lot of action, which I found interesting to read, and yeah, overall I had a good time reading this book. I've only read one other book from this author, and I would definitely be interested to check out more from her. I do enjoy reading historical romance. As you can see, I've read quite a few already this month. And I feel like with historical romance, it comes in waves. I kind of go through a phase of reading loads back to back and then get a bit burnt out on them, so I go for a while without reading them, and then I revisit them. But Caroline Linden is definitely an author that I would check out again from the future. I might go back and reread the rest of the books in this series. I'm not sure how many books there actually are in this series. Let me see. Because I think there are some that happen after this one. Oh yeah, it looks like there's 4 main books and then some novellas, so yeah, definitely be interested to revisit the previous books in this series. And those are the 10 books that I have read so far in June. I'm having a really good reading month so far. I'm really in the mood to read. Like, really in the mood to read. So I am reading like all the time at the moment when I can, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you would like to let me know what your favourite book that you have read so far this month is, please do. My favourite one that I've read so far this month is Servant of Earth. That has definitely been my favourite, and definitely one that I keep thinking about, because I don't know when the sequel is coming out, but it's coming out later on in the year, and I really cannot wait to get my hands on that one. But I will see you guys in my next video, and don't forget to check out back at the end of the month to see all of my stats for the month.